just try to go like, turn left?
Stop the crime!
Not a newsy motherfuckers.
Stop the crime! Stop the crime!
Trying to get an accurate count.
Sounds good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us today. I'm interviewing Anne Wright, an amazingly courageous and inspirational person who was once a colonel in the US Army and who resigned over the question of Iraq. She's led an amazing life of activism and peace activism ever since. So welcome, Anne. I'm so honored and thrilled to be talking to you today. And really, I think it's also important to mention that women's voices in matters of war and peace are very sadly lacking. We are trying to build a movement around that, but we hear men droning on time and time again, and it's so refreshing to hear a woman's voice. So without further ado, perhaps we can start by your first thoughts of why you joined the US military.
Well, thank you so much for asking me to be on your webcasts, and thank you for interviewing lots of people about our decisions to challenge our government's war policies. And mine, as you mentioned, is a little unique because I was in the U.S. military for 29 years. I joined it actually in my junior year of college because I needed money for the senior year, and the Army had this program, join the Army, they'll pay for your second or your last year, and then you only have to sign up for 2 years. And all I wanted really out of the military was to be able to get the hell out of the state of Arkansas. That's where I grew up, and I wanted out. And I didn't have any money, and the Army, its little slogan, join the Army, see the world. Well, it was during the Vietnam War. And I asked them, well, I don't really want to go to Vietnam. And they said, well, you're not a nurse, so you're not going to go to Vietnam. I said, well, all I want to go to Europe. And they said, well, if you hang in there, do one tour in the US, one year tour at some military base in the US, then the probabilities are very high that you would go to Europe your second tour. Well, most recruiters lie through their teeth. That's one caution I give. But this recruiter was accurate. After 1 year in the US, then I applied to go to Europe and got an assignment in Belgium and the Netherlands, and was there for 2 years with the military. It got me where I wanted. I wanted to stay in Europe, so I got what was called a European out. But I stayed in the reserves because I thought, with all these U.S. military bases around, it'll be good to have some sort of little ID card that I can drop in, because I wanted to stay in Europe another couple of years and just do my own traveling. And even though I was not, I wasn't a pro-Vietnam War person, but I wasn't out there on the streets protesting against it. And in fact, in talking to some of my old college friends at the University of Arkansas, we cannot remember any anti-war events at the University of Arkansas in the 1960s, when the rest of the country was erupting. But in our part of Arkansas, the guys were getting drafted. They were going. Some of them came back. Some of them didn't. But it didn't generate what happened in the rest of the country, which was really outrage against the war. So I ended up going to Europe, traveling around Europe a lot, getting another job with Department of Defense. This was down in Greece for the home porting of the Sixth Fleet into Athens. And I helped develop the school system for military dependents. And all of this just giving me an opportunity to travel in Europe. And a lot of people would say, well, boy, you were really crass about that. I mean, you should have been, I should have been doing a lot of different things. That's for sure. But looking back on it, it was doing what I wanted to do for myself. And that's a little bit selfish, but that's what I wanted to do. I ended up staying in the reserves for another couple of years, and then went back on active duty with the military. and did another 7 years with the active duty Army. And then I transferred. I applied to the U.S. Department of State to become a diplomat, and ended up being a diplomat for 16 years. And it was from the diplomatic corps that I ended up resigning 20 years ago in 2003 in opposition to the war on Iraq. And that was after I had been in U.S. embassies in Nicaragua, Grenada, Somalia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Sierra Leone. I helped reopen the embassy in Afghanistan in the winter of 2001, and then went on to what was my final assignment in Mongolia. And that's where I was when I resigned in 2003. And then, after you've gotten out of the U.S. government, which I had spent virtually my whole adult life in the U.S. government. And one of the reasons I did was that I wanted to have a retirement. I wanted to make sure that when I was as old as I am now, or actually much younger than I am now, because I'm 77. And but when you could retire, I wanted to have an income, and I didn't want to be dependent on anybody else. And so I, like many other people that decide to make the U.S. government their career, don't necessarily agree with the policies of all of the crazy people that the U.S. public elects to be our government leaders. I mean, I started my work with the government when Lyndon Johnson was president, and I worked in 8 different presidential administrations. And there were lots of policies that I didn't agree with, but there were ways that I could feel like I wasn't harming anyone by work that I was doing, by working on policies that that I didn't feel that were that harmful, because the U.S. government certainly has a wide range of nefarious and not so nefarious things that it's involved in. So that's why I ended up staying so long. And a lot of people, after I resigned, a lot of people have mentioned, well, why in the hell did you stay so long in the government? And it wasn't that I agreed with everything the government was doing, but for my own personal interests, I wanted to have that retirement, and I stayed. And so that's the story.
Yeah, okay. Well, before we leave that episode of your life, and you briefly mentioned Somalia. Now, I never saw the film Black Hawk Down, but I believe you were involved quite closely with the activities in Somalia at that time. And you played a pivotal role in trying to explain to the US government the difference between peacemaking and peacekeeping. And could you just briefly elaborate on how that went? Because, at the end, I think the US just pulled out without much notice, left the country in a shambles, much as it did in Vietnam, and more recently in Afghanistan. They have a policy to start, but not a policy to end. So perhaps you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was assigned to the State Department in Washington, D.C. when let's see, which one was it? It was the Bush administration, Bush 1, in the last month that he was in office, decided that he would send 30,000 Marines into Somalia, much to the surprise of most people in the U.S. government, because the U.S. military really had not been sent into any place in Africa at that point. And the decision to send 30,000 Marines into primarily Mogadishu, and the reason was that they rightfully wanted to break the stranglehold that these evil warlords had on the country, and the warlords were stealing all of the humanitarian food aid that was being shipped into the country. There were tens of thousands of Somalis that had died by that point, that had starved to death. In fact, there was a city called Baidoa, City of Death, where tens of thousands just in that place had died. So the Bush administration started first airdropping food supplies into parts of Somalia, and then they decided they would try to break the stranglehold that these warlords had. So they sent the Marines in on virtually Christmas Day. I think it was in 1992, And shortly thereafter, the decision was that we, the U.S. government, would send not only Marines, but we would send diplomats in and civil service people to help re-govern the country was really what it was, to send people in that could help with basic civil duties like getting the police back on the streets, doing this, doing that. And that's how I ended up going there. I was sent in to be a liaison with the military on the issue of funding the Somali police. I was then seconded, handed over to the UN mission as the US wanted to get out of that mission. They wanted the United Nations to bring in its peacemaking force. But as a part of that, the decision was that a retired US Navy admiral would lead the UN mission. And he said, if I'm getting stuck with this, essentially that's the way he felt about it. If I'm getting stuck with this, I want to have my small core group of US government employees that are going to be working with me, because he had never worked with the UN before. Well, anyway, so that's how I ended up being the head of the Justice Division of the UN operation in Somalia in 93 and 94. And during that time, there were attacks that the warlords made on UN forces and on US forces. And there were attacks that the UN and US forces made on the warlords. And one of them in July of 1994, I believe it was, or 93, that's when it was the US military that just sent helicopters in to blow up a building that they believed had one of the notorious warlords, General Adid. Well, it turned out the military intelligence, as is so often incorrect, was wrong on that. And the people that were in this multi-story building were actually tribal leaders that had gotten together to try to figure out how they could stop the warring factions, the Somali factions and the warring factions of the US and the UN. That US attack by helicopter killed all of the tribal leaders. And when the people of Mogadishu saw what happened, there were hundreds of young Somalis that raced into that building and ended up tragically killing some international reporters that they didn't know who had done what, but they saw these internationals in there. They killed those reporters. Well, the bottom line was, I, as the head of the Justice Division, wrote a memorandum to the Secretary General's representative in Somalia, which was this Navy admiral, saying what the U.S. forces did was wrong, that they gave no opportunity for whoever was in that building to come out. They just unilaterally decided they were going to blow up the building, and that was wrong. And it does not abide by any rules, rules of warfare. So this memorandum that I wrote was leaked very quickly to the international media, and so the international community could see that there were splits in how people in the UN mission and the US mission felt about that. Well, that memorandum ended up curtailing my job in Somalia for a while. The admiral virtually never spoke to me again, and within a month I was on my way back to Washington.